Right, welcome back. Video 7, GUIs and OOP, Object-Oriented Programming. So what I intend to convince you of in this lecture, video slightly longer than normal video, is how beautiful graphical user interfaces and object-oriented programming, how beautifully they fit together. So I'm going to claim, and you mightn't have noticed it yet, but if you don't have OO, then you get into a nasty mess very quickly. We've got our globals here, count, label. We might have other event handlers. All the event handlers will need their globals. There'll be a great big list of globals here. It gets messy very quickly, and OOP is the solution. With two buzzwords, encapsulation. What OO does for you is the ability to wrap a whole heap of functionality into a class, and abstraction, the idea of generalizing that to more general purpose GUI components, for example. And I'll demonstrate both those during this video. So I'm going to start with this piece of code here, which I've got here on the right hand screen as well, which it's kind of a derivative of one we looked at earlier. I'll just show you what it looks like first when we run it. We get a silly little window with an up counter and a down counter. That's all it does. It's very similar to the one that had the single button and the left and right clicks to go up and down respectively. And the only other difference is that this one has a label, count colon, which is a label for the count. That appears, if you look down here, the count label. Sorry, that's confusing the name. It's the name of the count. The name label there, which has the text count, and it's sticky to the east, that is to the, what side does it look like to you? To the right hand side, and the count itself is sticky on the west, so the count here is hard up against, or the label is hard up against the actual count value. So hopefully that's trivial. You can pause the video and look through it if you need to. I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to show you how OO to the rescue to make this thing, as a starting point at least, get rid of the nasty globals. So to do that, I'm going to create a new class, and my class is going to be called GUI, and I'm going to stick all of this code inside the class. Blam, step one. What was the main, I'm going to call my initializer. This is what I'm going to do to construct my GUI, and because I like my initializers at the start of my classes, I'm going to paste it in up there instead. I want to get rid of my globals, so I'm going to do that right now. But in order to get rid of them, I'm going to have to make the globals attributes of the self object. So I better declare myself a self object. Every function should have one. Self. So we've got selfs all over the place, and I'm going to insert self dot in front of things. I'll do this, and I'll stick that in front of everything here so that these all are attributes of my GUI. That makes sense? Hope it makes sense. That looks a bit messy. Let's put that over there. Command and do the same there. And where was I? I was busy putting selfs in front of things. Self dot count. Now I don't want the window I'm going to treat slightly differently. I don't really want the window to be created inside here or the main loop in here. It just feels wrong to me. So I'm going to change the game a bit. I'm going to have a main here, which is going to construct the TK window. So window will be a new TK, and I'm going to create the GUI by passing that window into it, like a so. So that's a parameter to the constructor now. So I take it out of there. And of course now I'm going to have to run the main loop out here as well. So I construct the GUI and then I run my main loop. So how am I doing? What I've mainly done, just to repeat, is I've made everything self dot, where I had what were local variables of my main function. They're now attributes of the, wrong place, attributes of the object, the GUI object itself. So I'm not sure what I've lost. Quick eyeball over to see if I'm missing any. Oh yes, self.change, that's a method of the class, not a global function. How are we looking? Let's see. I'll soon find out if I've lost anything because it won't work. Evaluate GUI, up, down. Woo, I got them all. How about that? Okay, so I've now got the entire GUI wrapped up in a class called GUI, which takes as a parameter the window in which to run it, and I create the GUI by first of all creating a window, building the GUI in it, and running the main loop. That's step one, and if you're playing along or if playing along with the video, you may want to pause and just work through that a bit to make sure it's working correctly before we move on to the next extension. So the next step I want to take is to, instead of wrapping the entire GUI into a class, I'm going to consider that this bit of it here is a GUI component that I'm going to wrap into a class, and then I'm going to be in the position, for example, to construct a GUI which has that component in it plus a quit button, or later on, and I'll get you to do this final exercise, as many different counters in up-down counters as I want in the window. So here's 2 up-down counters and a quit button. So how do I do that? So in order to wrap up a set of GUI widgets into a standalone component, I have to use a frame. So I'm going to call this a GUI counter, and I'm going to construct a frame. So I'm going to go self.frame is a new frame in the window, and I'm going to grid it into the window somewhere. Now, where am I going to grid it in? Self.frame.grid, sorry. I've got to grid it in somewhere. Row equals somewhere, column equals somewhere. The question is, where's those somewheres? This seems like a case where the parent of the window, the main function here, is going to have to say, where do you want to put this GUI component? So I'm actually going to pass these in as a row and a column parameter here. So this is going to be a GUI counter, and I'm going to say where in the window I want it to go, and I'm going to put it in at 0, 0. So now we say we grid the frame into the parent window at row equals row, column equals column. Looks a bit odd, but what that's saying is that the grid command row parameter is set to whatever this was, and so on. Since I've now set up a frame, I wish to create the child widgets in that frame, not in the window anymore. So what was the label window here, this has to become self.frame, and that applies to all the widgets. So we'll go through and find the second label and the 2 buttons. They've all now gone inside the frame. So this whole lot now is packaged into a frame. So at this point, all I've done is just make it a little bit more portable. I haven't quite finished yet. Let's just make sure it still runs. Looks good, haven't changed it yet. So now I can change my mindset a little bit. I create the GUI counter in the window, and now I can create another button in the window, and I'm just going to advance this here to remind myself what it is that I'm doing. There's the command I want to do. I want to create a quit button, which is something we haven't had before. We've had to quit by closing the GUI window. So we're going to create a quit button, which is a useful thing anyway, as a button in the window with the text being quit, and the command we want to execute now when you click on the button is going to be a special new TK method, destroy. So got a good name for it. That means destroy the GUI. Let's see if I've now got what I wanted. I've got to position the, oh, I haven't finished yet. I've got to position the button in somewhere. Quit button should go in at, be gridded into my parent window at row equals 1, column equals 0. It has to be below, remember? And I may want to put in some packing and so forth. So let's put in a little bit of padding. Pad Y equals 20, 10, whatever. And the way I've drawn it here, I'm spanning 2 columns. Let's just leave that out for now and see what happens without it. I don't really need it, do I? Up, down, and a quit button. So I've now got a reusable GUI component, and what I'd like you to do is pause the video and see if now you can create a thing with 2 GUI elements in it. And the other switch I want you to make is I want you to be able to change the label that's present inside the up-down counter. So this one, the label has got count. This one's the label got another. This might be, for example, if these are some sort of up-down counters, they might be the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. So this might be X and Y, or some such thing to move Who knows? Who knows? This is just an idea. So I want you to do that, pause the video, and then the last little 2 bits of this particular video. First of all, a generalization of the process here of constructing a larger GUI app. So we've got a main function which creates the window. We create a GUI in that window by calling our main GUI class. Our main GUI class may have components like an up-down counter in it, which it will add in there. So it will plug in all of the sub-elements of the GUI. It'll set up all the event handlers for its own widgets, and the event handlers for the sub-components, like here for example, will be within the classes that are implementing those sub-components. So that's the general framework. And that's all I have time for in this particular video. Thank you for watching.